Welcome to the world of MCA Discovision.
To begin playback of a disc, turn the player power on, place the disc on the spindle. Use the play button to start.
Discovision, that you be the boss. Now I'd like to show you some of the valuable things your MCA Discovision system lets you do.
Most persons find it more convenient. Gently pull up as you press down on the center shaft with your thumb. You'll hear a click. Simply plug one jack into this outlet.
How about that? Pretty easy, isn't it? Discovision.
This red light comes on.
Simply press stop. After I've stopped the action, you're going to practice using these buttons. The Discovision player gives you many special capabilities. Stop, play, slow, forward and reverse.
Imagine a dog chasing a rabbit around a tree.
How can you get there in a hurry? Now you enter the number just like dialing a push-button telephone. 2, 6, 3, 2, 4, search. Discovision. By the way, notice that the sound cuts off when you're running at anything other than normal speed. Use one of the step buttons. One single frame of picture is now held on the screen for as long as you want. Take as much time as you want, you're in control. Here's step forward. You found me again. Welcome back. Simply press stop.
Eject stops the disk and returns it to the bar position.
I'm sure you'll find using your new MCA Discovision system to be rewarding and enjoyable. I thank you for watching.
All right, how's everybody doing? Sorry about the delay. I'm putting together an order to send some product to Scott over at the Marlin team here. So I'm just finishing that up. I'm just letting him know. Sending him some ABL kits and filament sensors and bed mats. Fun stuff that they can use to test things out on machines. So I think we should be good. Let me see here. Processing. Come on, update his order. So I figured you guys... There goes my... There goes my lights because my PIR sensor isn't detecting me moving. So I've got this little box here, and this is a 3D printed case. I printed this on my little King Rune. And inside here is an ESP32 and two boards that are stacked on top of each other. So there's one board, and I would take this apart, but it's a pain. But basically they're stackable boards. and you can use these. You can use these to monitor power. So I'm going to go over quickly what was involved in setting this up. So there's two different kinds of firmware that are used for these. The boards themselves are all open source. Schematics, the BOM, all that stuff, which is nice. And the guy actually, because I have two 200 amp CT clamps for my main panel that require a bare wire connection, I emailed him, and he actually did a one-off for me and made two of the ports instead of the headphone jacks that the normal clamps use. He put two pin screw terminals that have plugs on them. Really nice. So, and I just used, I didn't have time to make the model custom, so I just melted the holes wider with a soldering iron and then cleaned it up. So it's good enough for government work, as my dad always says. But the case design is really nice. If you notice, it's actually two pieces, okay? And they snap together. So the design of this case is really nice. Now you can put, so there's the main board, okay, which is on the bottom here. And then there's an expansion board, which is what's on top. And you can actually put 6 expansion boards for one ESP32, meaning one ESP32 can monitor 42 different circuits. Okay, 42 off of one. Now, these boards are, I think the main board was like $75 and the add-on board's like $65. So very fair pricing. Good quality. My only complaint was there wasn't a lot of solder on the little headphone jacks that they use, so I added some on just to beef it up so I don't accidentally kill the connectors, but that's just me being nitpicky. But really nice. Now, they have one firmware called EMON ESP, which uses an interface to EMON CMS, so you have to have an actual server set up to host the database and everything for this to feed data to. Now, the EMON CMS works great if you only have the main board. If you have the add-on board with their official one right now, as I'm making this video on 4/11/20, the add-on boards just get added to the total power. Now, I want individual monitoring of each clamp, so that didn't work for me. They do have, it looks like they're working on one where each clamp shows up separately for EMON CMS, but it's not fully working. I was able to flash it. I will say I'm used to the ESP8266s. Any of you guys working with these ESP chips? So this is, I got an extra one here, and I bought this all from the guy. The only thing I did not buy from him was the 200 amp clamps because the max he carries is a 120. And we have a 200 amp panel. It took me a while to figure this out. When you guys are flashing these, there's an EN and a boot button. Right when you go to flash, so you hit start, right when it says connecting, you press the boot button, okay, for a second and let it go. That will allow it to accept firmware. There was, unless I missed it, I didn't see any documentation in his stuff saying that that's how you flash these. So that took me a good hour to figure out why the hell these weren't taking firmware. Until I found some other, I looked up random videos of these boards in particular and then saw that you have to press this boot button. So, yeah, once I got past that, I'm using ESP Home on here. And the configuration, the documentation is okay, but if you don't have programming, like this is not a product for you if you don't want a project. The hardware is great. The chips they're using on these boards are amazing. I can read like 0.1 amps changes on a 200 amp CT clamp. It's amazing. So the hardware is great. But like most of the open source stuff, the documentation is poor, and if you don't have prior experience with these type of boards or programming in general, you're going to have a really hard time. So it's not a plug and play solution. I love the ESP8266s. I've got a ton of ESP8266s around here. I got two on there's a product called Connected, KONNECTED. And that replaces like a wired alarm panel. So this house came with an alarm system. So I bought those and I'm using those. Those are running 8266s. I'm not sure, Shadunk. I'm not really doing printer support in this. We're going over the power monitoring here. And then I'm going to go install it and I'll do a follow video. So I have a little test setup here, so I'm going to show you guys my sketchy ass test setup, because you need to calibrate the clamps. Now they do give you, I bought 6 80 amp clamps because they're small for sub circuits. So like my air conditioning, I'm going to be monitoring my air conditioning, Samantha's office, the circuits that this computer I'm using right now is plugged into, and the other garage circuit. And then my sub panel that feeds the sub panel for the shop, and my sub panel for the garage that feeds the AC and all this stuff. So what this is going to let us do is not only am I going to be able to see the real-time power usage and amp draw of our whole house, but I'm also going to be able to have an exact number of how much power our business is using. Meaning we have actual data to be able to write off our expenses for energy when it comes to the company. Right now, we just have to estimate it, and we know the business uses the majority of our power. So what I'm going to be doing is using this to data log, and this is going to feed data to Home Assistant. Home Assistant will then write it to what's called InfluxDB, which is a database add-on, high-performance database add-on for Home Assistant. And then to get nice, pretty graphs, there's a plugin called Grafana that can query that database, and it's pretty easy to use. The hardest part I had was figuring out, because I'm using CT, the 200 amp clamps I have, which are over here, they're not ones that are typically supported, or not, they're supported, but they're not documented, is the word I should say. So they have it at what's called an internal burden resistor. These other ones do not. So this board has burden resistors, and I had to cut 2 little jumpers on the back for these 2 ports here, okay? Because the bigger clamps I'm using have internal burden resistors. And what the guy John, who runs Circuit Setup, explained to me is that if you see an output on a CT clamp and it's in MA, so it's outputting voltage, it usually has an internal burden resistor. So he's been very helpful. I've been emailing him, probably bothering him more than I should have. But he's been great, and it turns out he's actually a customer of ours. So when he emailed me back, he was like, yeah, I thought your name sounded familiar. I bought stuff from you guys. So, yeah. Let me switch over to my arm here, and I'll show you guys how I calibrated and tested it. I actually had to go through our entire house and find a light that I had not converted over to LED yet, so I could use the incandescent light bulb to calibrate these, because you can't use LEDs. I mean, you could, but it's going to be a hell of a lot more work. So this mess of wires here is definitely an electrical hazard. So I'm going to connect everything. I'll show you guys. So you've got all these plugs here, okay? So these have plugs. Man, the white balance on this camera is fucking terrible. USB live camera. Hang on. Let me lock the focus in, and they turn the brightness down a little. Jesus. Okay, that might be a little better. Or is it the gamma's too high? All right. So I have the box here, and you can see, so I'm going to show you my test rig here. This looks like a mess, but it all, I promise you, it all makes sense, okay? So I'm just going to pull these leads out here, and I'm just going to snip all these because I'm going to have to untangle these anyway. So the clamps come with like about 3 feet of cable, and I bought all the clamps from him. So these smaller ones, these are 80 amp, and these bigger ones, these are 120. So to calibrate these, you want something that's a resistive load, like a light bulb, or I wouldn't recommend a hairdryer because some of them can regulate, and what that'll do is fluctuate the amperage and the wattage that's being pulled. So you want to use something that's going to stay consistent. So a 60 watt light bulb. So I have here, I took a socket off of an old light fixture I had and wrapped the shit out of it in tape, and it's just soldered up to a cord. Okay, so I have a 60 watt load. It pulls about 62.5. And now you're probably wondering, well, okay, how am I supposed to calibrate this if I don't know the load? Like, I'm trying to go in this blind, and if I don't know how much that bulb is pulling exactly, how am I supposed to get that? Well, you do need another device to do that, okay? So I am using, I'm just making this less cluttered here. So I have here going into my kilowatt meter, okay? I took a plug, and this is just 14 gauge solid house wire, and I put it onto the plug, and here's my line, and here's my neutral, and you can see I have these all on the line. Now, one thing is, when you're putting these on, if your reading is negative, you have to flip this around. So physically take the clamp off, flip it around, and put it back on. Now, you can flip it in the firmware, but I would rather just have them on the right way. So on this stuff, I have all these clamps. So my goal is these two giant clamps here. These are going to go on my main 200 amp panel. Okay, so we have a 200 amp panel feeding the house. I have a 100 amp sub panel running to the shop. So these are going to go on the main panel. These are 120 amps, so these are going to go to the shop, okay, on the shop panel. So I'm just going to move this down just so it's together. And then these two are going to go, these are also 120s, are going to go on the other 100 amp sub panel that feeds the extra garage circuits and the AC unit. And then I have these for individual circuits. So I'm going to use one for the circuits that were already run in the garage, which my computer and a bunch of other TH3D equipment runs off of. So there's one circuit, two circuit, and these are max of 80 amp. He was out of the 20s, which are smaller, but these are still plenty small enough to fit in your box. So, arrow toward the load, in other words, yeah, except these are backwards, because if you see here, the arrow's pointing this way, my load is this way, so that doesn't work. I guess it depends on the clamp. It's correct on these big ones here, but for some reason on these small ones. But as long as it gets good reading, it doesn't matter. You can flip it around. So now that I've got, so TH3D, this will be for the shop, this will be for the two circuits, and then one of these will be for the circuit that feeds Samantha's office. So now I have all of TH3D's power draw, okay, just from these clamps here. Okay, so these guys here, or actually, I lied. So if I move these over here, because the sub panel that feeds the garage is for my office here. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These 7 clamps are just so I can get the TH3D value. So these are all for TH3D circuits. This one's going to be for my AC compressor for the house. And I'm going to see if it works. I shouldn't have to monitor both legs. I think if I just put this around one of the two legs, obviously it's 220, I should be able to get a reading off of here. I'm monitoring both the phases on the sub panels because obviously the load's going to vary based on what we're using. So my air conditioner, and then this one's going to be for my server rack. And then this one I haven't figured out what I'm doing with yet. So I got one extra clamp here that I'm not going to be using. I'll figure out a circuit to put it on. I just have to look at my panel. But off the top of my head, I can't remember what I would want to like monitor this for. I don't know. So I got an extra one. So to hook these up, so like I said, I think he takes custom requests. So like I said, I have these two, and these just came with bare wires. So he provided these connectors here. So one thing I want to tell you that I was reading is that once these are on an active wire, so this is unplugged right now, once you have these physically installed, you have to connect these to your board before you clamp them onto the panel. Because what can happen is the power coming through this transformer can create a high voltage on the end that could be dangerous. So you want to make sure these are all plugged in before you start clamping them onto wires. So on this particular one, I have this port here and the other 3 on the bottom one. These I have set up and calibrated for these 120 amp clamps. So I'm going to go ahead and plug these into here. And these are just headphone jacks. And then the other small ones here, so I got the 3 80 amp ones here. And then the other 3 right here. And to power this, you have to use an AC transformer. And I bought the transformer from him. I'm just using a 9-volt AC Jameco transformer bought directly from Circuit Setup. They aren't paying me to do this. I'm just doing this because I thought this was really interesting. Just to be clear. So I have this already flashed with ESP Home and it's tied into Home Assistant. So I'm going to plug this in and let this boot up. It doesn't take that long. So what I did here was, and I wrapped the shit out of this in electrical tape. So on this, I have a heat gun that does not vary its load plugged into one of these 2 outlets. And then I have the light bulb that goes into here. So if I plug this in, you can see the light bulb comes on. And because this is a silicone surface, I can just let this sit on here and it does not matter. So right now, if I look at my kilowatt, I'm pulling 0.52 amps and 62.6 watts, and my voltage coming out of the wall is 118.3. So this is already added into my Home Assistant setup. So I'll show you what this looks like. I do want to kill off my, hang on. So I'm going to switch over here to my main monitor. Let me just close out some of my personal crap here. There we go. And let me switch over to my monitor here. So main mon. So this is the code that runs the thing. I've edited my Wi-Fi password out so you guys don't see that. I have it statically IP'd. You do not have to have it statically IP'd. And then I have stuff in here. So you can actually enable a web server on here. I don't. So I have it disabled. Just comment it out. This is all in the documentation. So if you go to ESP Home, these are using the ATM 90E32 power sensor. You can see here. So they have all the configuration values here. All the configuration values here, and basic info on calibration. Okay, and you can see here for meters, I'm using the latest 1.4. So you can see here, these are the power meter calibration values for the AC one. So, and they give you a formula here. There's a thing called a gain, and if you see here, they give you examples. So like I have the 80 amps. So these values for the 120 amp and the 80 amp were dead on. So I could tune them a little bit, but I'm within half an amp and within a couple watts in terms of my calibration. So at a certain point, you just say, screw it, it's good enough. So, but there are example configs. So basically, as you look at this for a little while and read and see the formatting that has to be done, you then get an idea of setting this up and customizing it to your own liking. There's also templates here for seeing watts per channel, total amps, that kind of stuff, and then energy monitoring per day. So as you see in here, I've got these. So I got my main panel, phase 1 amps, watts, phase 2 amps, watts. I got the line voltage here, and you only need to define this once, as well as the frequency, which you see here. So basically, I have all these labeled. So I got my amps and watts from each clamp here. You can see here, I've already got them labeled: shop panel, phase 1, phase 2, garage circuit 1, garage circuit 2, house AC, server X, Samantha office, and then the one that I haven't assigned yet. Now, I put these template things, and these show up as a separate sensor in in Home Assistant, so you can see I now have my main panel total amps, so it's adding the amps together of the 2 CT clamps on each phase. Same thing for the garage. And then I also have a garage total amp, so not only that panel, that sub panel, but also the 2 individual circuits I'm monitoring that were already here when we bought the house. So I have an idea of how much that garage is pulling. Same thing for the shop. Now, to get my house usage, I subtract the panel amps for the shop and the garage and those circuits from the first 2 clamps. So the 2 clamps on my main panel. So I can see at a glance, how much is my personal energy usage, okay? So like we're a home business. So what happens is I'm able to now get the total amp usage for the house by using the clamps and math here. And then also here's all the clamps for the business. So here's the sub panel for the shop, the sub panel that feeds my office, then the 2 circuits for the garage, because all the TH3D stuff runs on these circuits, and then the circuit for Samantha's office. So this gives me an at a glance total amp usage for the business. Now, I also have the same thing set up for wattage, so I have amps and watts in real time. And then energy usage. So this is the entire panel, okay? Kilowatt usage for the day. The business's kilowatt usage for the day, the house's kilowatt usage for the day, just the shop, and just the garage, okay? And then in order to use this platform total daily energy, you have to specify an NTP server, meaning the device has to know what time it is. So my pfSense firewall is running an NTP server, so I'm having it pull the time from my pfSense box. And what you do then is you hit save and then you hit upload. So let me switch here. Let me undo the, okay, so if I hit save, go back, and since the first time you flash this, you actually have to compile the firmware on Home Assistant's ESP Home dashboard, download it to your computer, and then flash over USB. Once it's flashed over USB, you can then make any changes from here. Now, I have had it time out a couple times, and if it does that, you then need to pull the module and flash it manually. It's kind of a pain, but we'll see. So if I hit upload here, it's going to go ahead and compile the firmware, and this is using Platform IO, just like our printer boards. And this Threadripper ripped through that pretty quick. So now it's actually updating over Wi-Fi the firmware on the ESP32. So if I need to make changes to the names or calibrations, I can do that. So once you flash the initial firmware onto the ESP32 board, you can then update and upload over here. So you can see it came back up, and now it's feeding the data. Now, one thing I did notice, if you're using an update rate of faster than 10 seconds, especially with all this data, if you got a ton of stuff like I do, you can have lockups with the ESP, I've noticed. It just shits the bed. So 10 seconds seems to be good. So, but let's say you did this and this is your first time flashing, you would go here, you go to compile, and it's going to compile in the browser. And then once it's done compiling, you're going to see this button, download binary, light up. So I hit download binary, you can see it's downloaded, and then I would use ESP Home to flash it. Now, to figure out when I'm actually installing this, what goes where, I've actually set up an Excel spreadsheet so I know which clamp number goes to what, and I'm going to put labels once I find my label maker on the actual printed box so I know which is which CT. And you can see here 12 is still unassigned, and then the rating, so I know which one is calibrated for which port. Yeah, you can stack it to 6 boards total. So 42 circuits off of one ESP32. That's impressive. So now I have, if you go and do your Home Assistant, let's say it's already added, it's showing green in here. You can see here, I've got a couple here. I'm running ESP Home on a couple. These are actually 8266s. And I have a mix of ESP Home and Tasmota. I've got both. I am liking ESP Home because I can literally just update my devices right from here fairly easy and make configuration changes. So if you go to integrations here, if you eventually Home Assistant will usually auto discover. I do have that enabled, but you can also go in here and it's static IP'd, so you can put in the IP of it. So I've already added it in here, and you can see here, here's my basement power one, which is what this is. If I click this, you can see here. So you'll see some negative numbers because they're all monitoring the same line. But you can see all the power usage here, and these are updating every 10 seconds. So this data is being fed to Home Assistant from this box, and you can see here it's logging. So like I said, I'm pulling, like, my kilowatt says 0.53. Look how accurate these are. Ignore these total ones with the negative, okay? These will be correct once I physically install this because I'm monitoring literally just a 60 watt load on all these clamps. It doesn't work. This is just for testing and calibration. But you can see how close these are. We're within half of a watt, okay? Which is crazy. So there's a plugin. So like I was talking about, InfluxDB. If you install this on your Home Assistant instance, you can feed your data to Influx, and then you can use Grafana to generate pretty graphs. So you can see how nice this looks. And I have just started scratching the surface with this. So you can see I've got some nice graphs. I've already been using this for a little bit. So you can see here, I have my pool pump Z-Wave actually monitors power. So I'm actually able to get my 240 volt voltage. And then these 120 volt is actually coming from one of the TP-Link smart outlets with power monitoring. So I'm able to actually monitor and see how my voltage looks over time. So if I do like the last 6 hours here, or 24 hours or 2 days, you can see all this data. So as you use this is going to be more and more popular. It's really nice. It's fairly easy to set up, but you can see here I can keep an eye on my voltage and go back. I've got up to a year of storage. And you can see here I've got all these temperature sensors. So these are all the temperature sensors in my house. So the outside one is an internet-enabled one. And then I've also got one, you can see here, pool water, pool pump, my living room, master bedroom, the shop, the house, the garage office, and the garage and the basement. So, and you can see the temperatures of all these different these different sensors in a nice clear graph like this. And you can see where some haven't updated for a while or they had an invalid reading, but it's pretty nice. So now what I want to show you guys, so if I unplug this and turn the light off, in a couple of seconds here, you'll start seeing these values for the real-time wattage and the real-time amp draw changing. And I just realized my big fat head is in the way. So let me change that so you guys can actually see this. So we should see this start dropping off to almost nothing. And like I said, it's the real time, so I usually leave it to like the last hour. So this average it? Yeah, it does. Oh, I'll have to change that. Because if you notice, last 3 hours, these values are changing. So I'm going to have to see. Let me see, am I able to have this? So this is how you set these up in Grafana. They're database queries is what they are. I actually have to look this up. But if I set the history of the last 5 minutes, so you can see here we've dropped off in terms of usage. Here's our kilowatt, and like I said, you can see the house is negative right now because that's got the subtractions from the business circuits, but this is just for testing. So if I go ahead and plug this light in, we should see that start coming up in a second here. So you can see that, or we got the real-time amp draw. Now I will do another video once I actually get this installed in the panel so you guys can see how this actually should look. Because like I said, the house is showing a negative value because of the circuits being subtracted from the business clamps. So now I've got a heat gun. I'm going to turn this on. And we're pulling almost 7 amps and 768 watts. So there we go. We start seeing all those spike up as it updates its values. And you can see here the kilowatt usage for the day is going up quite fast. And I can even put it in a higher one. So we're pulling about 1,250 watts now. There we go. So there we go. And you'll start seeing them drop off. And I'll unplug the light. And we should see everything get down to near zero. You'll never show a perfect zero reading. But they have to have some load on them to get an accurate reading. So obviously your house is always going to be pulling power. So my next step here is to actually install this into my panel. I'm not a trained professional. The ones you have to be very careful about are the main ones going on the top. So like these ones here that are going to go onto my main panel feeds, you cannot shut that off without calling your electric company. So you have to be very careful, very, very careful when working around these. Luckily, these literally just snap around the wire. And you can see I've got a huge opening here to fit the wire through. So these will be pretty easy to snap in place. But you do have to be very careful. If you're unsure about doing this kind of stuff, have an electrician come in, label it, get all your stuff set up like this and calibrated, label everything, and then have them put them on all the circuits. I'm going to do this myself. I actually installed my own sub panel that's feeding my office, this wall, and the mini split, because I do have a decent amount of experience in that realm. But again, if it's outside of your realm and you're not sure, don't be screwing with your electrical box. You can cause a lot of damage to yourself and your property. So I just want to put that out there. But the awesome thing is I should be like the fact that like these Atmel chips he selected for use, the fact that this can like read a 0.1 amp resolution on a 200 amp clamp is insane. So like it's awesome. The 200 amp clamps I got on eBay. Let me see. And one of the multiplier to 4 in the configuration. Now the problem is when you set the gain multiplier, it does it for all 3 ports. So each chip services 3 CT clamps. So you can set the gain right now as a firmware is set up per chip. So when I set the gain to 4x for the 200 amp clamps, the 120 amp clamp that was on that third port was reading way too high. So I just took a shot in the dark. I divided the gain number that they give you by 4, since we're going up in 4 on the gain multiplier, and put that in, and it worked. So I don't know if that was the correct way to do it, but the watt draw and the amp draw are correct. I theoretically think we might get slightly lower resolution on that clamp, but it really doesn't matter. I'm monitoring an entire panel with it, so I don't really care. So yeah, this Total Parts on eBay has these clamps. I just posted a link in the chat. And they were about $30 a piece. So I think I'm all in on this, probably about $400, which is not bad considering there's solutions like Sense, but that's literally 2 clamps on your main. Just 2 CTs, that's it. So for like $100 more, I now have an expandable 16 channel system, because let's say I want more channels. I can just buy another add-on board, print a new case that's taller, and boom, I have 6 more channels. that I can use. So I really like this. I do not like sending my data to the cloud, especially for all this stuff. I don't want to be sending all my power shit. So this is all being stored on my server in my basement locally over my Wi-Fi. So if my internet's out, it still works. It just works. It's all local. But there is that learning curve. So this took me about 6 hours to get everything set up and dial in and understand how to set this up. The documentation, no offense, John, the documentation is bad. The only reason I was able to get through this is because I have prior experience with these boards. So I just want to put that out there. The documentation for this product is not good. It's not a plug-and-play solution, not by any means. So just be aware of that. But if you're someone that wants to learn about how to use these ESP-type boards and do some programming, and we're talking basic programming. We're editing YAML files. There's not a ton of like stuff you need to know. It's just a bunch of little things and knowing what you need to do. So the documentation absolutely could be improved. There's a video using ESP Home that I think it's DigiBlur is his YouTube name. Yeah, this is how I found out about this, was through this guy's video. So you can see here he has his clamps and everything set up, and he's using Home Assistant. And they do have a 2-channel one with the clamps and the adapters. And I think it's like $120. So if you only need 2 channels, you can save some money. It's a little bit cheaper, but personally, I would probably just get the 6-channel because you can use just 2 if you need to use 2. But you can see here he's using these. These are the 100 amp clamps that the guy carries. So I would get the clamps from Circuit Setup if they have the size you need, because there's a lot of knockoffs of these, and he does get genuine stuff. So he seems like a pretty good guy, and all the stuff he sent me works. So you can see here, so those big clamps I have, those 200 amp clamps, they're going to go over the big wires like this in my panel, okay? So these are the wires that are always on. Even if you shut this breaker off, it's just shutting off from here down, all these other circuits, okay? These will kill you if you touch these. If you touch this or this, you're going to get killed. If you're going to get killed, you're going to be in a lot of pain and probably have to go to the hospital. So these can never be shut off on your main panel, okay? So do not touch these, and don't be screwing around your panel if you're an idiot. But you can see here, he's got them on all sorts of different circuits. He's got a lot of tandem breakers. Ugh, bro, your circuit breakers are all mismatched. I'm willing to bet his panel does not support tandem breakers. That's actually a code violation. Because these are completely different brands. You're not supposed to put tandem breakers in a panel that don't support it. And given the fact that this panel is ancient, this probably doesn't support tandems. So I could actually, if I see the part number, I should probably look up the panel and see if it does. But most of the old ones don't. Our house was built in 2003, and that panel does not support tandems. Do I still need face shield sent to you and filament? Yeah, so we filament and the plastic parts for the face shield stuff, the actual overhead sheets, we have gone through over 900 of those sheets already. We've distributed almost 1,000 face shields already. So filament and those sheets would be great, because Amazon has banned me from buying more of the sheets. So fuck the healthcare workers, right? Amazon's got to ensure those quantities, because there's so many schools right now open that need overhead transparency sheets. But I digress. Pull the meter socket, you could, but that's a whole nother thing. If you're careful, you can get your clamps over. Just like I said, these are always hot. Okay, meaning these, if you touch the wires inside here, you're gonna get knocked on your ass and possibly killed. So Emon CMS is another thing that this works with, but I could not get it working. So the thing is, though, I'm pretty sure you can use with what's the word I'm looking for? with MQTT, you can have your ESP32 send the data also not just to Home Assistant, but to MQTT. And I believe eMount CNS can pull from MQTT. So we'll see. But yeah, so he just goes over here. So I'll just show this here because this is what the boards look like. So this is the main board here. It's got the DC jack, the step down here for the ESP. And you can see he did a hybrid solution like I did, where he's got some 2-pin ones as well as the jacks. So he goes over here. He also has the 2-phase one. So they make one that's just 2. Same chip. And then he goes over setting up ESP Home. Now, some of his configurations did not work because of changes to ESP Home. So that's one thing. He shows you how to flash it here. I don't know if he mentions pressing the button. Let's see if he does. Does he? No, I don't think he did. But either way, I'll edit the video description and include this because this is a really good video. This is what piqued my interest in this product here. So, and he has the web server enabled here, so you can actually hit this and see. I'm just monitoring it through Home Assistant. So, it depends on when you did it. We checked that box during the week. So, if you got a confirmation, or actually, send another one in. I wonder, it might have been, if it was a while ago, it would have been an issue with the form, which I have since fixed. So anyways, he goes over all this stuff. He goes over showing the sensors in Home Assistant here. So once I get this all hooked up, I will be able to toggle a lot of my smart stuff, and I'll show you what it is. He actually goes here and, where is it? So he's going to actually move this here. So he's got a 100 amp CT clamp on there. And right now he's talking about how awesome the chips are, that he can get that resolution on a 100 amp clamp. So he should be moving the slider in a second here. So there you go. You see it jumped up? Look at that. And like I said, it only sends the data every so often, however many times you set it. I have it set every 10 seconds, which is plenty of resolution for me. But I will, I'll put the links to all this stuff. So here, I'm going to edit it right now. DigiBlur video, 200A clamps. And I'm not an eBay affiliate, so I don't get shit. It's okay. So, but these clamps do come with an internal burden resistor, and you will need to cut the back portion. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I think they have a picture of the back. So they have a little solder jumper on the back of the board, and you have to cut that. Here it is. His website is a little weird. So there's burden resistors. Bro, I didn't realize this. I would be posting a better picture. This is this is rough. There's a lot of flux on here. But see these JP1 and JP2. So since my two that already have the burden resistors are connected to these two, I actually took my Dremel with a little bit and just ground this. Ground it right here, and this disconnects the burden resistor. So, but for all the ones he sells, you're going to want to leave the burden resistors on. But he does have these configurable. One of the other things here is you can actually, if you have two AC adapters and you put them on separate phases, you can actually cut these and feed that second AC adapter into here and monitor the individual voltage of each phase. I talked to him and he said, yeah, you can do it, but it's not really worth the hassle, because then you have to have two outlets by wherever this is, and they have to be on a separate phase. So you have two phases in the US on your houses typically. So when you plug it in, let's say it's on phase 1, it's going to calculate. They're usually both phases are pretty close, so it really doesn't matter. But I do have a second AC adapter. I bought this from him. These are the ones he recommends, and I have an extra one here. So I also have an extra ESP for either projects or just a backup in case for some reason they do die. All in all, it's a nice solution. The hardware is great. Like the chips he's using, these Atmel chips are nice. The CT clamps he's using are nice. And the fact that it's all open source is really great. The downside is, like most open source stuff, is it's very complicated if you're not familiar with this kind of stuff, and the documentation is terrible. So I wish a lot of open source projects had better documentation, and if they just sat down for a little bit, like took a week and just refined everything and had clear step-by-step instructions, I think a lot more people would be able to set this up. But in my experience, it's not been very good in terms of straightforwardness. It took me 6 hours to get this set up. Now that it's set up, I'm super excited to go downstairs and put this in my panel. But I just want to be very clear that this is a project and you're going to need to do some digging on your own. He has, I don't know what level of tech support he includes with it. He answered some of my basic questions, but I didn't really ping him for any configuration information. I went and found that on my own. And there's enough information out there for you to extrapolate to get an idea of how to set up different things and then customize them for your needs. So I looked at the existing code, customized it for mine, trialed and errored, and saw what worked. So one thing you're going to want to have is something like this. Just an incandescent bulb, and this is unplugged, by the way, and you want to have your line wire split off so you can put the clamp on here to get a reading. If you do not have a kilowatt meter to do the calibration, you can use a clamp style. I have those as well. I use a kilowatt because I know they're pretty damn accurate. I'm also going to put some, I'll do it after, but I'll put some links in the video if you guys refresh after I end the stream, because I'm about to wrap this up so I can go install this. I'll put links down in there to some of the calibration tools, and the one would be the kilowatt, and then I have a Klein clamp meter that also does DC, so it's really useful for your printers. That would also be a really good tool. The kilowatt is like $20 and the Klein I think is like 60, but the Klein is much more versatile. So that being said, despite the poor documentation, I'm very happy with the hardware. I hope that they can eventually improve on their product and do better documentation on it. But in terms of the actual hardware, I really, really like this. His pricing on the AC adapters and the clamps and everything were very fair. They're only a couple bucks more than like Amazon or eBay. And quite frankly, I'd rather give him the money than Amazon or eBay. Especially since you don't know if you're getting genuine parts from these other sellers. The clamps are cloned because it's China, and he's getting genuine clamps. So I would highly recommend if he has the clamps in your size. And here's the thing: like I ordered the 20 amp ones or 15 amp, the really small ones, for individual branch circuits. He was out of stock on them, and I ended up just. He asked me if I wanted to wait. I was like, well, do you have the 80s? Because the 80s are only slightly bigger. You can use an 80 amp clamp on a 20 amp or 15 amp circuit. It doesn't matter. You don't want to use a 20 amp clamp on a 30 or 40 amp circuit, like for your air conditioning. So it's better to get a bigger clamp than you need than a smaller one. Because as far as I can tell, even with these big clamps, like this big 200 amp clamp gets the same accuracy as the little 80 watt. Because that chip is so good in these boards. So, yeah, I'm very happy with this. Like I said, I knew going into this, I probably wouldn't be able to like get good documentation on there because I was poking around through it before I bought it. But like I said, about 6 hours digging in, reading, watching YouTube videos. That DigiBlur video is very helpful. I might set up Emon CMS because I can actually install it on a virtual machine here and feed data to Emon and Home Assistant. But for right now, I'm going to use Home Assistant with InfluxDB and Grafana to get my pretty things. And I'm probably going to set up automations to send us emails at the end of the day, week, and month with our power usage totals so we have those. So basically, Samantha wouldn't need to log into Home Assistant or anything to see that data. It will be emailed to her as a report. Oh, I need a coffee. I am bumming it today. I'm in sleep pants. There's some fleece sleep pants on today. So, but I'm gonna have to move my server rack a little bit out of the way because I have it at an angle. I can still get into my electrical panel. But to remove the cover, it's all in one corner shoved in there and it's a pain in the ass. So, but I'm gonna go get this installed and relocate my server so it's not like partially blocking if I gotta take the actual cover off of my panel. I can still get in there to flip circuits and whatnot. But I was like looking down there, I was like, man, I'm gonna have to move this rack. I was like, I'm just gonna move it completely so I don't have to worry about it in the future. So anyways, that's it. I'm gonna figure out where to put, oh, Digiblur's in the chat. Well, that's, how'd you find this? Your video is the reason why I have one of these. So, anyways, that's about it. Like I said, an incandescent bulb. I stole this out of one of the lights in our house. This came with the house. And I had a LED type of these bulbs, so I'm just going to keep this around as a calibration tool. Because who the hell uses incandescents? It's 2020. So, yeah, that's what's gonna do. Be careful removing the head plate. I've removed it a million times. I've been in that box a bunch of times. I actually installed, and I'll show you guys. I think I have a picture of it somewhere. And my computer is not happy. Its fans are cranking right now, which is really weird. What? Oh, you know what? Oh, my backup software is syncing. That's why. That's why. Let's just pause that. It's trying to index a file that OBS is recording, so it's just freaking out. There we go. We should be happier now. Let me see here. When did I put that panel in? I think that was like... It wasn't... I don't think that was 20... No, it wouldn't have been 2020 because it was when I needed to put it in to put the air conditioning unit in. Because my mini split runs off of that panel. Because we have a 200 amp box, and luckily, I'm not complaining. The homeowner, when they built this house, they ran a shit ton of circuits. The downside is, like, obviously there's not a ton of draw from the house itself. Like, every room has its own 15 amp circuit. They've got like 3 20 amp circuits in the kitchen. There's a 20 amp circuit in the backyard. There's 2 in the garage. But I ran out of spots, so I put it's a 100 amp panel that can take tandem breakers. Oh yeah, Digiblur, since you're in here, check your panel. Make sure that you can actually use tandem breakers in there, because I'm pretty sure that panel you have, just looking at it due to the age, I could be wrong, but typically the older panels, it's not approved to use tandems in. So just be aware of that. That's one thing I noticed in your video, and they're all mismatched brand wise. So I have all square D panels here. Even the add-in one I put in as a square D. I want to say I put that panel in back in like August. I want to say. Was it August? I'm just going through my pictures to see. Maybe later than that. Pictures of the one in the garage. But also, I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know how accurate this is, but I have heard that if you have like an electrical fire or something, and they find that you're mixing breakers and putting unapproved breakers in your box, that you run the risk of actually getting the insurance claim denied. So me here, all square D panels, all square D breakers. And every single panel in this house has its own surge suppression module. I have the square D one that takes up 2 bays. I'm trying to find the pictures because I was very proud of my installs. The first sub panel I ever put in. And it came out real nice. It was real simple. I put a backer on the wall. I did a little, I think it was a 3/4 I ran to run the wire into it. And luckily we could run Romex here, so that was good. I'm literally just trying to find a picture of my panel installed to show it to you because I'm very proud of it. But for some reason it's not coming up. Did I run? That was when I patched the walls. When the hell did I put that panel in? Because I'm in October 2019 and there's snow on the ground in some of the pictures, and I definitely put that in when it was hot because I was installing the mini split in here. Trying to find it here. I got pictures from August, and there's the new circuits run, so it was before August. Here we go, I found it. So I'll just show you guys some of my shade tree electrical work here. Go ahead and judge me, roast me. Okay, so how I did this is there's a 3/4 inch conduit going into the basement, terminated to this box. All the grounds are bonded together onto an eyelet and then grounded to the conduit. Okay, so there's a total of 4 circuits in here, 3 110s and 1 220, all 20 amp, 12 gauge. I used Romex to go through the basement from the sub panel to this box here, and then 12 gauge stranded throughout the conduit. So I put all these in. These 4 outlets are on their own circuit, and then this is just a junction box. I think I zoom out all the way. So you can see there's my grounding lugs. This is when we were pulling them in, so there's all the Romex going through the basement. And then I ran another box. So here's the sub panel. I did mark the neutral, okay? I didn't have it marked here. I just remembered which one it was. So I've got my 2 phases here. My ground going to the bus bar. This ground is not bonded to the neutral since it's a sub panel. I've got my 100 amp breaker down here at the bottom for this sub panel, and I think I used 2 gauge copper here. This is 2 gauge copper. And then you can see here's my neutral lug here. So this is where those big CT clamps. As you see, I have a ton of room in this panel for like all these monitors. So like here's my air conditioner. I'm just going to slip it over one of here. The garage circuits, I think, are on the left side. I got them all labeled. These are from an old tanning bed. You can see I just disconnected them and ripped the box off, but I left the conduit in because I'm going to reuse that. But this was for a tanning bed that the previous people had. What the hell is GL3220? What the fuck? It's weird. So I forgot to pick up grounding wire. So this is 6 12 gauge ground wires from Romex that I took a drill and twisted together. So whatever gauge that would be equivalent to, it works. So, and that's here you can see. So in your main panels, just so you guys are aware, in your main panel, your neutral should be bonded to your ground. In sub panels, your neutral and your ground should not be bonded at all, period. So you can see here, I put a backer board up, and then, yeah, see this hole right here? That's where the bonding screw was. See right there? Right here? Bonding screw was right here. And actually, I don't think it came installed. It was in the box. But yeah, so here's my neutral bar. Here's my one phase, my second phase. So this is one of the panels I'm going to be monitoring. I'm probably just going to open this panel up and put the clamps in here because obviously I got a lot of room in here versus trying to shoehorn them in down here. And then I'll just feed the wires out through one of the holes here because I'm going to stick that power box right here. Okay. So, and you can see I've got a bunch of knockouts here. So I can feed those out through there. This line is for my air conditioner here. But let me show you further. So this was just that installation. So I got a little pre-bent 90 there, ran it to there, because it's only these wires going through. I did. There's white wire, there's white tape on that. So, I just didn't put it, I put it on after the fact. So here's another shot. So you can see my panel here. So here's the 100 amp. This feeds the shop. This was already in there when we got the house. These, for some reason, it bothers me. This is a square D breaker, but these are Siemens. And these are arc faults. So these are on my list of stuff to replace. I don't know if the Siemens are like listed as compatible for square D, but it bothers me that these AFCIs are not Siemens. So, but there's my connected board. So you can see here, this is where the original alarm panel was. And these are the boards that took over all the door and window or the door sensors and the motion sensors that came with the house. And this set of outlets here. Now, here's the thing. I could do the two-phase monitor pretty easily by just plugging each AC adapter, one here, and having these come off a breaker. But these are wired right now. Why they put two GFIs in here, I didn't do this. But why they put two GFIs in here, I don't know. But this is now repurposed. These 4 outlets are just repurposed for the server rack. That's it. So I'm going to monitor. That's on its own 20 amp breaker. So, and this is a 20 amp GFCI. It just doesn't have the little sideways one, whatever that's called. That would be cool. So, anyways, so there's my little box on the outside of the garage for the AC unit. You see I took all that down. Now, this was an existing Joan Dream box that I did all these bends here. Not bad for first try. And then, so they come up here. 2 circuits go through this pipe. A 220 20 amp and a 120 20 amp go through here, over, and then down. So there's my little Mr. Cool mounted outside with the little 1/2 inch weatherproof whip. So this is what cools my office. That's a lazy dog. So that's it. I actually got line set cover for this that I got to put on, but that was the completed install. There's a disconnect there. You see I had a window unit in here, which was annoying. Where is it? Oh, I'm going backwards. I was like, wait, I'm not seeing any further progress. I went the wrong way. So here we go. Here was pulling the cable. Did 12 gauge Romex. That's just the dog. Let me switch. I thought there were more pictures of that. That may be it. What the hell? When I was searching through the thumbnails. Well, maybe I didn't take any more pictures once I ran them. I thought I did. Guess not. But either way, electrical work is not hard as long as you take your time and do your research. If you don't, then that can be a very expensive learning experience. So, yeah, that's about it. I don't see any other photos here from the install, but I'm going to go put those downstairs. I'm going to get everything clamped on and start monitoring all my stuff. I have not heard about no main breakers and residential panels. Maybe maybe condos. I don't think my condo had a shut off in the unit, but I mean, like, there's a panel in here. This panel feeds the shop, so that 100 amp goes to this panel, and then it goes out to the shop, so I can actually shut the shop off from here. And this has a shut-off breaker at the top, and so does the other sub-panel in there. I didn't get one that had a shut-off at the top for the basement because the panels are right next to each other. I can open the main panel and just shut the sub-panel off. So, that'd be a question for an electrician. I'm not sure. So I've got basically the setup process is figure out what firmware you're going to use. I use ESP Home. Get that set up. Calibrate your clamps. Install it, and then figure out how you want to process it. Whether you're just going to have, little graphs in your Home Assistant that are just showing your real-time usage, or if you're going to log it to a database to get more data, it's up to you. I like it. There are other options on the market like Sense. Sense, I've heard a lot of good stuff. It's basically power monitoring for idiots. It's very simplified. It'll give you an idea of what your panel's pulling, and they have a thing that supposedly identifies devices based on their power draw. Anyways, I don't know. I didn't like that Sense is 100% cloud-based. I'm going, don't get me wrong. I love certain cloud things, like my Google Homes. Love them. And they integrate with Home Assistant. If you're going with a voice assistant to tie into Home Assistant, you can do some stuff with Alexas. But in terms of Home Assistant being able to control that device and use them for notifications, I have, when the doorbell rings, they all play a doorbell wave file, and then the ones that have screens actually stream the live view from my front door from Blue Iris. There's a lot higher level of integration and hackability with the Google ones. Amazon's been locking all this stuff out so you can't hack your own device or even just use it to do stuff like show a video feed. But like I said, really happy with the hardware. Just know going into this, the documentation is not very good. DigiBlur's video is really good to get an idea of what you want to do. He also posted his config as well. I'm going to copy and remit my personal information, like the Wi-Fi, from my config, and I'll post that into a pastebin or something, so you guys can see what I'm doing. But hardware-wise, awesome hardware, awesome little box. He does have, I'm assuming if you guys are watching this channel, you probably have a 3D printer, but if you're lazy, he does offer the cases to be printed too. So, but I obviously have a million machines here, so I opted to print my own. So that's about it. Yeah, TED is another option. I don't know. That one wasn't very open. There's another one that I had high hopes for that has an ESP32 in it that could potentially be hacked. Okay, that was $100. Now let me show you this. I feel like this is worth mentioning because this is what I was originally going to do, but the amount of time it would take to reverse engineer firmware to work on this would be more significant than what it took me to do. So this looks really interesting, but it's all fucking cloud-based. Okay? This has two giant clamps. They're 200 amp clamps, and then they give you 6 small ones, and I believe they're 20 amp a piece. They might be more. I'm not sure. But for $100, you get a full system. Now, there's no integration with Home Assistant with this. There's no local control. It only feeds it to their cloud. Now, if I look this up, this guy did a teardown of it, and lo and behold, where is it? There's an ESP32 in here. So you could theoretically get this one and flash this with ESP Home, but the thing is, I have no idea what chips they're using to handle the power monitoring. It looks like this chip right here is probably for these CT clamps here, and they have an expansion board which he shows here. So this has got to be some sort of analog to digital converter, and this communicates over a 3-wire headphone jack connection. So if you don't care about having only cloud, this is a really cheap option with the potential to be hacked. I'm not sure why no one's bought this and hacked it yet, because it does have an ESP32. The fact that this has, the the ESP32 chip in here, you can absolutely find the pinout for this. And I'm sure these are probably programming headers. So you could probably, you could definitely reprogram this. The problem is figuring out the pins that all these chips that handle the clamps talk on, and if it's supported in ESP Home. So it's absolutely possible that this will work. It's just how much time do you want to spend on it? My time is limited, and I didn't like the Sense thing because it's only cloud. If I was going to go only cloud, I would pick this up. But the thing is, like, this has a lot of potential, but how much time is it going to take to actually make it work with a local solution? So basically, you'd be buying this for the hardware. Shit, $100 just for the CT clamps. I mean, I guess I could, thinking about it, if I needed more clamps, I'm wondering if these would work with these boards, because you could just buy these and use them for the clamps. Like, there's eight clamps for small circuits and 2 big ones. And they have the little 3.5. So I'm wondering if these, I should send this to John, who runs Circuit Setup. I wonder if these clamps would work with his boards. So, those are so here, they're saying, due to hardware limitation, our 200 amp sensors report a minimum load of 0.79, and our 50 amps report a minimum load of 0.29, which we refer to as noise. Yeah. So, and it sounds like it's the hardware driving the clamps, not the clamps themselves. I'm willing to bet it's the hardware driving the clamps, because I'm not seeing those nice Atmel chips like Circuit Setup uses in theirs. They're probably just using a cheap ADC converter and reading the analog signal. So you're not going to get that higher resolution. So you can hook a CT clamp up to an ESP3266 with some resistors and capacitors. But this Atmel chip that's on these boards is stupid accurate, and I'll pay more for that. So all in all, like I said, I'm happy with the hardware. There's other options here, which we just talked about and covered. I've been trying to keep as much stuff in-house as possible in terms of home automation stuff, because right now, if my internet's down, I can still access my Home Assistant from my phone. I can't use the Google Homes, but hey, I need to turn a light on or something, or change my temperature. I can do that. My Ecobee thermostats, even though that's a cloud thermostat, they have HomeKit integration, which is 100% local. So Home Assistant talks to my Ecobee thermostats over HomeKit. So I have full local control over almost every single smart home device I have. The only thing I have not gotten local control over is my litter robot litter boxes. And those have ESP8266s, and I haven't been brave enough to crack that open and wipe their firmware out. Because the thing is, once I start, if I flash, unless I figure out how to back up the image, which I think I can do, if I start hacking around with it and want to put it back into service, I need to have working firmware on my part or reload their stock one. But that's something for another day. So I will post links in the video description for the Klein current clamp that I recommend. And actually, DigiBlur, if you're still watching, we've got the same current clamps from Klein. They're awesome. I love them. So I'll post a link in the video description for that. I'll also post a link for the kilowatt meter. You should definitely, if you got the extra money, you should definitely own both of those items. I've had this kilowatt for like 6 years. I love it. It comes in handy all the time. It's really good for when you're hooking printers up and you're like, how many can I put on a UPS? Tell your hot end to heat, tell your bed to heat, do an auto home. That'll give you your max load. And then you can figure out how many printers you can put on a UPS based on the UPS's load rating. So really helpful device. Those are only $20. If you're going to pick up any sort of energy like monitoring type thing, just for like diagnostics, buy a kilowatt. They're awesome. So I'll put that video or link in the video description as soon as I sign off here. So I appreciate everybody stopping by. DigiBlur, I am honored to have you in here. It's awesome. You are the reason I bought this in the first place. I saw your video and watched it like 10 times and finally pulled the trigger on it about a week ago. So, and they are still shipping. So John got that stuff out to me in like 5 days. So anyways, everybody, I will be doing another video after I get this installed and showing you guys the actual draws on all of our stuff. Yeah, Ender 3, you need at least 500 VA per Ender 3. We run 3 Ender 3s per 1500 watt UPS. So, or 1500 VA UPS. So, which those typically have a 900 to 1000 watt load depending on the brand. Like, I've got 2 HP Enterprise ones. Those are 1080 watts. My Cyber Powers are 980. So, you know. Anyways, everybody, I appreciate you stopping by. I hope you have a good weekend, and stay tuned for later because I will be doing another video once I get this installed and up and running, and I can show you what it looks like. And I'm really curious to see what our power draw is because I have no clue other than how much we use every month. So, everybody, stay safe, wash your fucking hands, and as always, happy printing. Bye-bye now. I'm going to go put these in and hopefully not get electrocuted. Take it easy.